Thomas Was Alone is an indie puzzle platformer developed by Mike Bithell. The main idea of the game is to use a variety of different geometric shapes to find your way from one end of the level to the other. It's not just a start to finish point. The shapes will start in different positions and in different orders, and you have to order them in the right way and get them to the right spots, and that could be located at completely different areas of the level, and you have to work out what order to use the blocks in, because some have different properties, and for example, some are quite large and can float, and some are small but can jump high, and some are small and can't jump high. So you have to actually sort of work with what you've got to try and get all your shapes into the right places. That's pretty much the entire premise of the game. But it's not really about the gameplay. The game itself is relatively short. It's more about the narration and the story. Now, it seems really weird, but I actually think the gameplay is more of a secondary feature of the actual game. I got the feeling that Thomas Is Alone is more of a... it feels really avant-garde, to be honest. There's some really experimental use of music and storytelling, and it actually works really well. The music is second to none. The music is composed by David Housden. He hasn't done a lot of stuff, but I'm going to be honest, it's a really nice piece, and I really like listening to the music. It should be the music you can hear in the background now. So yeah, the music is very good. The narration as well it's really weird that a game can be narrated in such a way as to make you feel actually attached to these characters, who are literally just shapes, just blocks, quadrilaterals, however you want to call it, of different colours, and they all have their own personalities, and they interact with each other in such a funny way. But it's not a literal interaction. They don't, you know, like have any emotions towards each other or anything. It's the way that the game is actually narrated to the player, and I found myself, actually, disliking some of these blocks and really liking others just because of the way that it was set out. There's one block in the game called Chris, who you meet early on. I really don't like Chris because he can't jump very high and he's a little block. But, and the game tells you, that some of these other characters don't like Chris and they don't trust him, and Chris is this sort of like mardy, grumpy old cynical block. I can't get my head around the fact that I was actually feeling like really sorry for some of the characters and not liking the others, and they were like, they're shapes. It's so weird. I really encourage you to just try it for the sake of just getting this really entertaining story that just messes with your head. In terms of the difficulty curve of the game, I actually think it's pretty reasonable. I haven't actually had any quarrels at all. The characters are introduced in a pretty smooth way, and I never felt out of my depth with some of the puzzles. So the answer is always pretty obvious. It's just a case of sort of like shifting your blocks around to try and get them in the right position and things like that. It's more of a just practicing the switching between them, rather than actually just spending ages sat there trying to figure out what the actual solution to the puzzle is. My biggest complaint would be the fact that, at the end of the day, it is you're just moving things around in a configuration, and you can have a really good narrative and a really good soundtrack, and don't get me wrong, they're absolutely amazing, there's nothing wrong with those. The actual gameplay itself is pretty much what everyone wants to know about a game, is the gameplay satisfying? And the gameplay is satisfying to some degree, but you're definitely going to notice the repetition. And my only reason for continuing to play it is because I want to find out what happens to these characters. Not necessarily the actual gameplay itself. There's nothing new. It's been done years and years ago. So yeah, I mean it's really unfortunate, but I think the actual game itself is a bit of an experimental piece. So I can't really hold a grudge against it for the fact that it's incredibly cheap to buy, especially seeing as right now there's only 8 hours left on it, so by the time you watch this video you're probably too late, but there's a humble indie sale going on, so it's ridiculously cheap to actually pick up the game. It's just worth playing through and then sitting it down and then not really playing it again. And I think that's actually the best way to play these sort of games. You just sort of play through them once and then put them down and just think to yourself, yeah, I've had a really enriching experience, and I've played through it and I've experienced it. I've given Thomas Was Alone an 8 out of 10 because the music and the narration is really good, and it does compel me to want to keep playing the game just to find out what happens. The gameplay it's okay, there's nothing wrong with it, it's just been done loads of times before. So if you're someone who's just really there for the gameplay and things like that, you're not going to find anything in the game. However, for me, it's just a really nice game to just sit back and play casually, and just really enjoy the music to it. So yeah, I would pick it up for that reason.